The learning goal of this lesson is to identify the key idea in the diary of a young girl, considering the context, intended audience, and purpose that underpin the composition and construction of the diary. Anna was a Jewish teenager who lived and wrote her diary during World War II and the Holocaust. She was born on the 12th of June in 1929 in Frankfurt, Germany. Anna was the second child of Otto and Edith Frank. She was 3 years younger than her sister Margot. The Frank family lived in Frankfurt until 1933, when they immigrated to Amsterdam. At this time, many Jewish people were fleeing from Germany due to the wave of anti-Semitism. In 1933, the German government was becoming increasingly right-wing, most likely a response to the economic conditions of the time. The reparations the Germans had to pay after World War I to pay for the war had crippled their economy. Furthermore, the world was in the grip of the Great Depression, and there was an unemployment rate in Germany of approximately 30% in 1933. The most notable of the right-wing parties to gain popularity in this period was the Nazi Party. The Nazis blamed the Jews for the problems that plagued Germany, and 1933 was the year that the Nazis assumed power in Germany. In January 1933, Hitler became the Chancellor, and in July the Nazi Party declared itself the only political party in Germany, outlawing the formation of any other parties. Hitler, of course, had made his feelings about the Jewish race clear in his 1925 book Mein Kampf, where he wrote about the Jewish menace. The book is filled with anti-Semitic sentiments. The personification of the devil as the symbol of all evil assumes the living shape of the Jew. With satanic joy in his face, the black-haired Jewish youth lurks in wait for the unsuspecting girl whom he defiles with his blood, thus stealing her from her people. And in economics, he undermines the states until the social enterprises which have become unprofitable are taken from the state and subjected to his financial control. The Nazis employed the same strategy with Jews in Germany and all the occupied countries during the war: identification, isolation, deportation, and extermination. Anna's diary records the Nazis' employment of the identification and isolation elements of this strategy in Amsterdam in her entry on Saturday the 20th of June 1942, where she wrote, "After May 1940, the good times were few and far between. First, there was the war, then the capitulation, and then the arrival of the Germans, which is when the trouble started for the Jews. Our freedom was severely restricted by a series of anti-Jewish decrees. Jews were required to wear a yellow star. Jews were required to turn in their bicycles. Jews were forbidden to use trams. Jews were forbidden to ride in cars, even their own. Jews were required to do their shopping between 3 and 5 p.m. Jews were required to frequent only Jewish-owned barbershops and beauty salons. Jews were forbidden to be out on the streets between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. Jews were forbidden to go to theatres, cinemas, or any other forms of entertainment. Jews were forbidden to use swimming pools, tennis courts, hockey fields, or any other athletic fields in public. Jews were forbidden to sit in their gardens or those of their friends after 8 p.m. Jews were forbidden to visit Christians in their homes. Jews were required to attend Jewish schools, etc." Anna introduced deportation in her diary entry on Wednesday the 8th of July 1942, when she wrote, "Father has received a call-up from the SS." A call-up. Everyone knows what that means. Visions of concentration camps and lonely cells raced through my mind. At this point, the Germans were deporting Jews from Westerbork transit camp to the Sobibor extermination camp in Poland. Between April 1942 and October 1943, approximately 500,000 Jews were murdered in Sobibor. The Nazis euphemistically termed the genocide of the Jewish race as Endlösung, the final solution. Anna's diary ends abruptly. Her last entry is Tuesday the 1st of August 1944. We know that everyone in the secret annex, Otto, Edith, Margot, Anna, Hermann, August, Peter and Fritz, was arrested 3 days later. They were then transported to Westerbork, a transit camp in the Netherlands. Since they had hidden, the members of the secret annex were considered to be criminals, and as a punishment were moved to the top of the deportation list. On the 3rd of September 1944, all the members of the secret annex were transported to Auschwitz in Poland. The train that carried them to Auschwitz was the last train to travel there from Westerbork. The Jews on these deportation trains were crammed into storage compartments and forced to endure intolerable conditions, deprived of food, water, and toilets for the duration of their journey. When they arrived at Auschwitz on the 5th of September, the Jews were forcibly separated into men and women on the train platform. The men and women who were deemed fit to work were admitted into the work camps. The rest of the passengers were sent to the gas chambers. Of the 1,019 Jews who arrived on the 5th of September, 549 were murdered, including all children under the age of 15. Anna, who had turned 15 in June, was one of the youngest passengers to survive. Somewhat amazingly, all the members of the secret annex managed to survive this initial cull at Auschwitz. Anna, Edith, Margot, and Auguste were taken to the women's camp, whilst the men were taken to a separate camp. I've read that at Auschwitz, Edith began giving all her food to Margot and Anne, an action that provides a stark contrast to the woman lacking in motherly qualities that Anna describes in her diary. In late October of 1944, Anna and Margot were transported to the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp in Germany. Here the girls died of typhus. The exact dates of their deaths are unknown, but they came heartbreakingly close to surviving the war. When British forces liberated the Bergen-Belsen prisoners on the 5th of April 1945, they discovered around 60,000 prisoners, most of them seriously ill. Thousands of corpses lay unburied on the camp grounds. It is approximated that the Nazis murdered 11 million people during the Holocaust, including 6 million Jews. It's staggering to think that 2 out of every 3 Jews living in Europe in 1933 were dead in 1945. Of the 8 Jews hiding in the secret annex in Amsterdam, only Otto survived. He returned to Amsterdam where he was given Anna's diary. He published an edited version of the diary in 1947, known to scholars as version C, 2 years after Otto Frank died in the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp in Germany. In an interview later in his life, Otto revealed that initially he was reluctant to publish the diary, explaining, "My child's diary is nobody's business." However, Otto changed his mind, and publishing and promoting the diary became the central purpose of his life. He was completely single-minded, and Eva Geiringer, Otto's stepdaughter, described Otto's mindset saying, "His life after the war was Anna. All the rest was secondary." When considering the purpose of the diary of a young girl, I believe it's vital to consider what drove Otto to publish the diary, as well as what prompted Anna to compose it. John Nyman, Otto's friend, said in an interview that the diary served to help him deal with the pain and help him to see a purpose, that her death wasn't in vain. This purpose was derived directly from the diary. Otto explained,
Anna wrote, "I want to go on living after my death." And she wrote, "If God let live me, I want to work for mankind." So you see, I have a certain task.
the publication of the diary was the way that Anna, through her writing, was able to live on and work for mankind. When Otto was asked in an interview what the purpose and aim of the Anna Frank Foundation was, he replied,
"In short, I should say, to fight against prejudice and discrimination, respectively hatred against people of different race and religion."
Through the diary and later the foundation, Anna became a symbol for the 6 million Jews who, like her, died during the Holocaust. I believe Otto's quote captures the key idea of the diary of a young girl, which is that prejudice, discrimination, and hatred led to the deaths of 11 million people during the Holocaust. Otto edited the diary with Miriam Pressler, and their choice to include an afterword describing the tragic fates of the characters hammers home the value of the text as a historical document. Although the afterword doesn't provide the figure of the 11 million deaths during the Holocaust, there is a sense that the tragedy that befell the members of the secret annex represents the greater tragedy that occurred, building on the idea that a million deaths is a statistic, a single death is a tragedy. Omitting the statistics regarding the number of people murdered during the Holocaust is a powerful silence, and the diary is filled with these silences. Anna's diary doesn't include entries that describe the horrors she experienced in Westerbork, Auschwitz, or Bergen-Belsen. The disease, the brutality, the death. She couldn't, or her words would have been lost. In this way, the diary is like a play, where the violence occurs off stage. The fact that the diary ends so abruptly actually heightens its intensity. According to Eli Wessel, in the introduction to the diary, the inevitability of the tragedy that awaits Anne and the Frank family provides a presence, like a thief in the night, waiting and watching, hovering, like death. As a husband and father, I have enormous empathy and sympathy for Otto, the sole survivor of the Frank family. I can certainly understand his need, bordering on obsession, to tell his family's story and keep their memory alive. This explains the efforts and cost he endured to first publish the diary, to validate its authenticity, to have it transformed into plays and films, to set up the Anna Frank Foundation, to reply to thousands of letters from fans of the diary, and to preserve the building that housed the secret annex as a historical site. Today, the secret annex is a tourist site. If you visit, you will watch a video where Otto Frank addresses you directly.
To build up a future, you have to know the past. You see, I'm pretty old now, but I am not a bitter man. Young people write to me, asking questions. Many are writing a diary themselves, calling their diary Anna's diary. They write to Anna as Anna wrote to Kitty. And so, especially in the time of adolescence, they get a lot of confidence and hope for their lives in reading about Anna and her experiences.
In this video, Otto said, "To build up a future, you have to know the past." I think this quote powerfully conveys the importance that Otto placed upon the diary as a historical document. However, it is Nanette Blitz-Koenig, a prisoner at Bergen-Belsen concentration camp, and one of the last people to see Anne alive, who has articulated Otto's purpose for publishing and intended audience for the diary most succinctly. In an interview, she said,
"My children, my grandchildren, and probably my great-grandchildren will all know and will all wonder how come it could ever happen. And that is the importance of speaking, talking, and telling the world."
I have focused on Otto's purpose and intended audience up to this point, but now I want to turn my attention to Anna, who wrote the diary of a young girl. Anna wrote two different versions of the diary, version A and version B, and each version has its own purpose. The purpose of version A is, I believe, the purpose of all diaries, an expression of the ideas, thoughts, feelings, and emotions that the writer feels they cannot share with other people. Alain de Botton, the writer and philosopher, believes that we should all hide the darker aspects of ourselves from the people around us. A diary functions as a non-judgmental confidant. It's an outlet or a vent for the thoughts we have that, if expressed, would cause conflict with the people we socialise with. The diary is certainly Anna's intimate confidant. She names it Kitty, and in her first entry on her 13th birthday, she wrote, "I hope I will be able to confide everything in you, as I have never been able to confide in anyone." The intended audience of this initial diary is only Anna, although she does allow Margot to read specified entries. On the 29th of March 1944, Anna records that she has heard on the radio that there are plans to make a collection of diaries and letters written during the war. According to the foreword of the definitive edition, the one that we read, an excited Anna began rewriting and editing her diary, improving on the text, omitting passages she didn't think were interesting enough, and adding others from memory. The purpose of Anna's rewritten version of the diary, version B, is about recording life as a Jew hiding in Amsterdam during the occupation, and the intended audience is now the Dutch people. And that's it. You've made it. To recap the main points of the lesson, I analysed the context, intended audience, and purpose of the diary of a young girl. The book is a historical document exploring the social, historical, political, and cultural context of Europe during World War II and the Holocaust. I looked at the A, B, and C versions of the diary, identifying the purpose and intended audience for each version, and talked briefly about the version that we actually read, the definitive version, which is a compilation of the A, B, and C versions as well. So as the orchestra music begins to play, The final thing for me to do is to thank you so much for watching.